Hey guys, the Curious Owl here, and today I am going to be reviewing City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Mortal Instruments series and was my random TBR pick for July and August because I didn't get to be able to read it in July with a bunch of readathons going on. But I have to say, I was fairly disappointed with this one. I was very underwhelmed, basically, and I will say that part of that may have been because I switched from the physical copy to the audiobook version about halfway through, and that may have had something to do with my overall feeling of it, because I do remember being distracted sometimes with the audiobook. So that could have a huge effect in the way that this story was for me, so please take that into account as you watch this review. But otherwise, here are some of my thoughts regarding the actual book itself. I do also want to point out that this will contain some spoilers for City of Bones, so if you've not read the first book in the Mortal Instruments series, City of Bones, please do not watch this video. So after the events of City of Bones, essentially, and losing the Mortal Cup instrument, and learning that Jace and Clare are in fact brother and sister, and that their father is a murdering maniac and is threatening to essentially ruin the entire world, Jace and Clare and the rest of the gang have to figure out a way to stop him, and then comes this idea that he is looking for another instrument called the Soul Sword. And with that, they find out that he is actually killing off several different individuals within the shadow world, including different kinds of creatures like vampires and werewolves and fairies, and they don't know exactly what his purpose is for that. And so it is their job to try to figure out what he's up to and put a stop to it before he actually does something really, really bad. All the while with this, Clare is really dealing with some emotional problems as she doesn't understand the fact that, Jace is really her brother, and she's having a hard time dealing with that considering the strong feelings that she developed for him in the first book, and also dealing with the fact that she has feelings for her best friend Simon and is not sure whether or not she wants to be with him because of the fact that she still has very strong, albeit really weird feelings for Jace. Overall, I was very underwhelmed with the story. I think that I don't feel like I expected too much out of this, honestly. I just feel like I wasn't as gripped through the story as I had really wanted to be. And again, that may have something to do with the fact that I switched formats partway through and I got a little distracted while listening to the audiobook. So I'm not counting it down that badly, but I still, despite that, wasn't really gripped until probably like the last, I don't know, maybe 50 pages of the book, and even the parts that were supposed to be really gripping, I just wasn't connecting with the story as much. I will say though that, the story itself and what this book has set up for the rest of the series, or at least for the next book, does have me intrigued to continue the series to see if it gets better. I will say that Cassandra Clare does leave a lot of good intrigue involved to have the reader continue reading to see what kind of happens next. But I just wasn't really gripped with the story. I wasn't connecting really a lot with the characters anymore, and I wasn't really connecting well with them, I don't think, in the first book. But, that's basically reflecting on, after having not read this series for like 2 or 3 years at this point. And I just don't really know how to feel about this. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great by any means, but it was kind of just meh. The thing that I'm still not super keen on with this book, though, is the fact that there is even the relationship between Jace and Clare. Now, granted, in the first book, they didn't even know that they were siblings by any means. They had no inclination of that until Valentine revealed it to them towards the end of the first book. I just still am not comfortable. The relationship with them is so awkward throughout this book, which I think is fairly, self-explanatory considering the situation. But I just felt so uncomfortable reading these scenes with Jace and Clare by themselves because I kind of, for one, thought I was being the third wheel in the story, like I was way too present in the story, and I just felt uncomfortable with the idea of the relationship itself, that I just didn't quite get, that good fuzzy feeling that a lot of people seem to get with Jace and Clare. I just felt uncomfortable the whole time. I just don't know how else to explain it. But the thing is given their situation, I don't know how else, somebody could deal with the fact that they were falling in love with their sibling when they didn't even know that this other person was their sibling. I just don't really know how I would deal with that if I was in that situation. So I didn't want to really, get too invested with thinking about that, just because I know, I don't really quite understand how I would deal with it myself, so how do I expect these characters to deal with it in a way I would want them to? Now, as far as Simon as a love interest, I actually prefer him over Jace tenfold. Simon is such a sweet guy and such a caring individual, and I think he deserves way better than Clary, because she just puts him through an emotional ringer. And yes, she is going through her own crap, but you know, she needed to be honest with him about the situation that she was in, and I think that Simon just deserves so much more than Clary. I think that she doesn't give as much of a crap about him as she claims, and Simon is just too pure of a guy to want to be with somebody like Clary, who's going to give less than two shits about him. Like I said, I think Cassandra Clare really does a good job of building points of intrigue with her stories to have them continue, because although I wasn't super gripped with the story, there were so many things that were involved with the story that I was really enjoying. I think that there wasn't a lot of character growth in terms of, you know, each of these characters having, you know, anything, you know, any kind of changes in their attitude. But there was a lot of great lore and world building that I really enjoyed. Learning about the Soul Sword and kind of what Valentine is planning and what that kind of entails, and the different demons that he's bringing up, basically. Also, there's a lot of ideas, you know, surrounding around, you know, different characters and how they're changing and how they are becoming different individuals within this world. So I'm really interested to see kind of what kind of goes on from here in this series, because these points of intrigue are so well used. It's not oversaturated. It doesn't feel like there's too many things that need to be like discussed later on. It just feels like, you know, the next book seems like it's going to have a pretty good setup to where I'm interested to read the next book. And I just hope that maybe City of Glass gets me a little more gripped at the story, because I feel like this one, and then looking back on City of Bones, I wasn't super invested in the story. With all that being said, I basically gave City of Ashes a 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't really bad by any means. I think that there was, you know, some really great things involved with it. I did like the writing style. I do like the way Cassandra Clare writes, but I just wasn't super gripped through the story. I didn't feel like anything was super dire or really that intense as they should have been, and I just don't really know how to feel about Jace and Clary. I'm just really uncomfortable with their whole situation, and maybe that'll change. I don't really know. We will see. But I do enjoy the series enough to where I would like to read the next book and then maybe the other books involved in the world, because I know that Cassandra Clare has a lot of books involved in this world, and I'm excited to see, you know, where it kind of goes and what other stories that she kind of has within this world, because I really like the idea of the Shadow World itself. I like a lot of the characters that are involved with it. I really like seeing a lot of Magnus Bane in this one, and I'm so interested to see more of him and learn more about him if I can, and learning more about Luke and kind of his history with this family, as well as maybe Jocelyn, if she kind of comes into the story, who is Clary's mother. I like a lot of the story enough to where I would like to continue with it, but I just wasn't super impressed with this one for some reason. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit that button down below and subscribe to become an ally in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!